Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Blame It on Marketing. We are going to be talking about B2B influencers today, but with a slightly different angle, a paid media angle, and hopefully we'll be going through some media background / fundamentals with you as well, which is very exciting. We've got two wonderful guests with us today, but I will let them introduce themselves, so I'll kick it over.
Good to be with you, everyone. My name is Will, co-founder of Moon at Dawn with Chris, and I head up our strategy, client strategy and product.
Hello everyone, I'm Chris Peters and I head up all things growth and sales for Moon at Dawn, and I've spent best part of 15 years at predominantly big agencies. My last employer was WPP, where I head up the B2B global team for Wavemaker, and Will and I met each other last year, come together, and we're off to disrupt the B2B influencer category.
It's an interesting category to talk about. So guys, before we get into that, it's time for you to share your marketing confessions. So something that you have thoroughly fucked up during your career. Tell us a little bit about how it changed your life as well.
Well, I'll kick this one off, Will. So I had so this in a past life at one of the big agencies I've been at, and I was very young and junior at the time, and I was getting a little bit frustrated with a client who wasn't doing like some of the ideas that they were suggesting, and were trying to be positively provocative in terms of trying to do new things. And we're talking about one of the reasons why to do so was on the back of a campaign that the client spent a lot of money on and completely bombed. So I had the bright idea to reveal this in a meeting on Monday morning when his big boss from the US was coming over, and decided to tell him at 3 o'clock on a Friday, which I'm playing it back in my head now, was met with and he was a very nice man actually, but he did actually lose his shit. Actually, it's not often I've had a really angry client in my career, but he kind of divulged some hatred to that idea. So at 3 o'clock, it meant some weekend work. So it did mean that to put kind of my agenda to one side with working with a client, and it was an agenda with a good hearted spirit behind it, which was we want to do more interesting work. And this is how we think we can do it, but not undermining your core client to do so is not so good.
Indeed.
The stakeholder management lessons there.
I was super young.
Don't drop a not fun surprise on a Friday afternoon.
Yeah.
Just for your own well-being, you know.
I know someone who their specialty is to send like a 5 o'clock Friday email and I'm like, every time I'm like, fuck you, why are you doing that? Stop it. It's not good. Not good vibes.
It's not good. I think you just remind me. I never actually had the balls to do this one, but I had a colleague. This was back in the day when we used to have quite a lot of like media nights out or what have you after work, and she had a deliverable that was due on Thursday night when we was all going out. And what she used to do, her trait was to send an email saying everything's attached. See you in the morning, and she would not done the work, and then she would do it on the Friday morning. So anyway, just one.
Be like, oops, I didn't attach it.
Sorry, I didn't attach it.
That's exactly it.
God.
That's genius, but fucking
it is genius. I never could do it. I didn't have it in me.
That makes me now think that every time someone says that, I can't trust them. Thanks, Chris.
No,
New level of anxiety unlocked.
Post 5 o'clock now. If anyone sends you that trick, be sure to get back to them and say, no problem. Do you mind firing it over?
Send it now.
Yeah, right now.
I feel like also in the world of like Slack and WhatsApp and like, you know, online way more, you couldn't get away with that either, because they'd be like, oh, just quickly, do you want to attach that?
Yeah.
Real quick.
Yeah.
And you're like,
this was the times when you would have client calls all hovered around like a conference call phone.
Yeah.
I don't know if you even remember those days, but you'd go into a meeting room. Yeah.
Ugh, I don't miss those days. Those were horrific. So, Will, come on, share with us. What did you fuck up?
I was like sat thinking about this before the thing today, and there was just a laundry list of things. And especially when you work in the influencer space, there's just so many emails, so much comms, so much negotiation, so many things like just tend to crop up. But there's one that jumped out to me. It was assessing a collection of influencers for a client, and as you know, you're kind of going back and forth with the client about their feedback. And this particular client, let's say, was quite a harsh individual quite often. So you'd be vetting someone, assessing them, and they gave their very candid view of this individual. And they were responding to a forwarded email that I had then. So the influencer emailed me, I forwarded it to the client. They then gave their response with the influencer off email. I made the mistake and mixed up my threads, and I replied with the influencer in the thread with this client's direct feedback. The funny part of it was that because the client was, for obvious reasons, not happy with the influencer, didn't want to proceed, but my response was obviously a lot more of a British kind of just like skirting over the cracks. It was very like, we're moving in a different direction, but we're going to, definitely hold you in mind for anything in the future. But the client's email was anything but that kind of perspective. And super embarrassing. I guess the lesson for me now, I always double check what I forwarded, what I'm replying to, and making sure I'm not bringing in another thread into it. But it still makes me cringe now thinking about that one. Yeah.
It's a beauty.
Yeah. Maybe you should have like pointed it off to the client and be like, "Oh, you wrote it."
Yeah, well, actually, I think the influencer, because it's someone that I've worked with a couple of times. I think they even said, "Is this what people say about us?" Like, and I was like, "No, this is just the one time." But I can see how it might look to the poor influencer. Bless them.
So I was about to say maybe the influencer should be less of a twat, but obviously
no, it was
they're fine in general.
Client. Yeah,
yeah, and that's
There we go. Let's be PC.
So, as I alluded to in the intro, I would love to talk about kind of B2B influencers in the light of them being a paid media channel, which I don't think we look at them in that sense. But just to refresh everyone, can we talk about the good old model of paid, owned, and earned, and what are the differences between those different type of media reaches and types?
Yeah, so as a introduction, we can think of paid media through the lens of like how can we use particular channels to amplify a brand's message, piece of content that they're looking to reach to their audience. So that might be a programmatic ad, it could be a spot on TV, it could be a Facebook or LinkedIn ad, so ones that we're all kind of accustomed to. So an owned channel is where you own exactly that, you own a piece of content. So whether that is a blog that you have on your website, it's content that you're pushing on the various social media channels, but it's in the reference of it's a piece of content or IP that you own that you distribute to the public and your audience. And earned is very much of people talking about you externally. So whether that's your peers in the trade press, your colleagues across social media channels, or it's being picked up by various news outlets. And that's usually around maybe interest in thought leadership. It's quite often the B2B sphere, research and original thought leadership, but it's just where someone thinks it's worthy enough to comment or share to their audience.
Thank you.
Excellent.
And obviously, paid can be influencers, but I think in many ways that they can also cross over into the other categories because, they may have mentioned you might sponsor that post and then have it go through that. You may write something and get somebody to then use it in their content, and that will be like to paid, and maybe then someone else talks about it through earned. So where do you see kind of influencers sitting in the mix, and how are you talking about that to your clients at the moment?
Yeah, so I think by and large, the way that the market is right now, everyone seems to be mostly focusing on the paid area, just the pay-to-play promotion, and almost using influencers as a promotional channel. I think where Chris and I agree, the bigger opportunity and the underexplored opportunity for a lot of brands is that more kind of collaborative style of working with influencers and how you can bring them into your own assets and get a more authentic kind of message and story integrated into your content as opposed to just the pay to play model. But likewise with earned, I think there's even some things that probably we haven't even thought of yet of how you could really drive earned traction with influencer communities. I think a lot of that probably comes down to either a bold creative execution that's going to gain traction and have like an element of virality about it where people want to pick that up and participate in it, or it's also just fostering and building community with those kind of trusted voices around your brand. And that might also be including customers, your own employees. And that's the thing, influence isn't just limited to kind of what people might imagine it to be. It's the whole ecosystem of advocacy across employees, customers, etc.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
that's where I find that whole like the three kind of categories weird, because I know like if you look at a diagram, a traditional marketing diagram, as if you were doing a marketing degree, there'd be like a Venn diagram, right, with this overlap. But the reality is that one doesn't really happen or shouldn't happen without the others, and that you should
Mm.
think about it in that round, because it is quite a fragile ecosystem, right? You only really get the most out of it, in particular in this instance, working with B2B influencers, if you think about it with those kind of like that each part is going to benefit one another, and that it's like a cycle, right? And I think maybe that is where the trap is for some businesses, and I'm sure you guys talk to your clients about this, like when someone comes to you and they're just like, I just want to work with this influencer.
Yeah.
When you're having that kind of talk, how do you manage that? Because obviously it's kind of like a bit of a like managing their expectations, but also talking through the reality of what might be a longer term relationship.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's probably the one that probably comes up one of the most frequently. I guess it's we're here to help our clients at the end of the day. If there's someone that they want to work with, and it's a lot of this, if it's a passion project, it's someone that they're keen on. We're not here to say no, but what we're here to do is educate and show them maybe where the optimal best pathways are. So it could be using that influencer they've given us as a frame of reference, and then showing them 3 different alternate options that maybe deliver a better outcome, and we can point to that. But Chris, I don't know if you had additional view.
No, I think it's exactly that. It's very much how you can look at influence through a lens of like data, and that's not something that's accustomed to those in influencer marketing. It's very much led by like, almost like what we call like vibe marketing, which we look at, you know, influencers through a lens of, do they talk the language to our audience that kind of sits right with us as a brand? Do they have a large following? Do they have good engagement? But outside of that, there's not much rigor that sits behind influencer discovery. So how we like to play in that space is what kind of Will alluded to, which is like, how can we just put a bit more substance behind working with people of influence, because it's a lot of money. Some of these influencers' fees that are demanded are increasing. There are some that are more effective than others, and it's often, you know, attributed to the context of the campaign. So we're just, you know, approaching the market with a view of like, how can we just help ultimately give clients more confidence behind who they're wanting to engage. And what's interesting, for the last kind of few weeks, just very randomly, we've been working with teams who have talked to us about celebrities and celebrities to work with, and actually the client teams interested in more so like how to move away from celebrities. So it's more clients who are kind of driving that conversation. But we've seen it with just a few activations in just recent times where B2B brands are starting to engage with celebrity figures. It has its own kind of purpose and goal and what have you. But no, I think certainly when we're looking at practical influencers to work with day to day, it's like, how can you just arm clients with more data and more insight?
It's what I'd add to that as well, is it's what Chris and I are calling the moneyball-ification sort of influencer marketing. I don't know if you guys have seen the film, and I guess what Chris and I say in this analogy is, very often I'm Jonah Hill and he's Brad Pitt. So I guess Chris is winning in that analogy. Yeah, so, but I mean, the whole premise being that, I mean, the film is about, you know, a baseball coach taking over one of the worst baseball teams in the league, and how they do a data-led approach, and just people that can get on base, as they call it, deliver the outcome, regardless of who they are, whatever human biases you may have, do they deliver the outcome, and let that be your North Star. It's the same way that we approach influencer selection, and just make sure the data is guiding us beyond just kind of a gut instinct assessment.
Do you find that that is challenging to have that conversation? Because at least from my experience with B2B influencers, a lot of the times the idea is brought to the team by somebody who kind of wants it to be a bit of a vanity project for their company. So if you turn around and you're like, actually, this influencer is really not going to do much for you, but here's 3 others that will. Do you get that pushback of like, oh no, but like, we just want them?
I think, in my experience, if you show them the data, at the very least, there's a conversation to be had. You know, at the end of the day, if a client really wants to execute the way that they want, we're here to support them as best we can. And at the same time, the data gets you so far, because you could find someone that's on paper delivering a great outcome, but there is an element of that creative execution, and do they fit? And is it just, you know, you want all parties to be happy in that respect? So there is a bit of to and froing in that sense. And I guess it's not exactly a science, but it's not exactly an art either. It's kind of a bit of a hybrid of both. So yeah.
I'm also really interested in how like B2B influencers and customers kind of connect with each other, because especially in our space, I think that's the critical part, right? right? Because it's almost like the founder, in your case, Ruta, says, from a vanity perspective, I want to work with this person, even though they're not quite right. But actually, I guess quite a lot of this is not just about the influencers' performance themselves, but it's actually about the connection to the customers and the ICP that the brand has. Because what I have witnessed quite a lot is that person, whoever it is, it's usually the founder, wants to work with, doesn't really have a connection point to the actual people that they sell to. And I find that conversation quite difficult, because naturally at times having conversations about ICPs with founders is difficult. So yeah, I just wondered what that's been like for you guys, because like if the audience isn't there, if it's not the right audience group, is it worth it? It's probably not.
So I think it comes back to like how you're thinking about distributing the message. So we talked about paid earlier on, and one of the benefits of paid, it allows you to put the content, the collaboration, partnership in front of the people that really matter to you. So if there is a really influential figure that perhaps there is a niche audience, but actually the lifetime value, the deal sizes like warrant it, or actually there is justification and some rationale about actually finding the right person of influence, because we can use said data points to help reinforce that against that ICP. But the role of the paid media is just making sure it gets in front of those people where they spend their time. I think audience size can be a bit of a blocker and minimal data, but it's about just looking at it a bit more agnostically and broadly about the distribution doesn't have to sit in LinkedIn with an organic piece of content. It can sit way beyond that, which face-to-face events, programmatic, it can be webinars, piece of thought leadership. There's a whole host of different activations. To your point earlier about challenges, it's that, like, how can we meet clients where they think of influencers through typically LinkedIn and organic distribution, to actually like, let's go and meet your buyers where they are with the trust and authority from those influencers.
And what I'd add is it may not be that you want to activate someone with the ICP match, but do they have a story to tell that addresses the pain point of the customer? And combining that with the correct distribution, as Chris said, that can be quite often where some of the most fun and different angles, approaching it from a unique perspective that solves a problem outside of that sector, that audience, it tends to stand out a lot more in my experience.
What are some of the key metrics that you guys are looking at when it comes to bringing influencers on for a piece of work, but also to then measure the effectiveness of your work as the agency that's doing that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think we'll maybe tag team this, Will. So this is a conversation, this is a question that comes up quite a lot. And like how we respond to actually how you're going to measure this stuff, and is that we try and build influencer programs that fit a measurement framework for how a brand measures success, and we don't try and shoehorn any original new piece of methodology. There are some like extra pieces of like insightful metrics that we like to share, but ultimately we see this as a blocker to moving beyond a pilot, that if you're just trying to put in like vanity metrics, again using that phrase. So we like to speak to our brands, well, are you measuring like MQLs to like SQLs conversions? Are you looking at engagement for key accounts? Are you looking for a high reach for your total addressable market? Actually, is it a social play where we are looking at simple engagement metrics? So we kind of just work backwards from there and try and put in appropriate measurement methodology for that, versus trying to weed in anything too custom. But having said that, Will, like, we've been leveraging some new methodology that helps with the discovery of influencers that's really resonating, and we're now starting to feed that into our reporting as a really good benchmark versus all of the data that we've been looking at. So Will, do you want to just elaborate on resonance?
And resonance score, sure. So we've alluded to kind of ICP reach and how we assess influencers for that. But I came across a common challenge, which is if a client is trying to reach, say, for example, C-suite in Fortune 500 companies, that as a percentage of their engagement is going to be 0.5%. And what I found was happening, I'd be going into presentations and saying, look at my recommendation, they've got 0.5% reach with your audience. It's not really, it's a bit of a tough sell, right? So we've developed this new metric called resonance, and what it's aiming to do is really demonstrate depth of impact with these hard to reach ICPs. So firstly, do they just have reach with those hard to reach groups, it weights it accordingly, but then also multiple touch points. So is the same individual engaging frequently? Are they getting macro reach versus like targeted reach? And there's a whole bunch of other different elements that go into that to help us get a really good sense of, and bring it back to almost paid, almost making it like a media buy, getting us a good understanding of, okay, we're going to have the best chance of success with this individual with the highest resonance ultimately. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like something that you could use for many things you are trying to do in marketing. So like, I don't know, if you're doing a campaign, like what will be the right, I appreciate it's not fun to calculate, but like it's a good thing to think about if you are trying to do a campaign and reach people. Like, will that thing have resonance in the same way that influencer might? That's a bit offside, but I get excited about new metrics. So thank you for that, guys. I'm going to be thinking about that continuously from now on.
Yeah, tell us if you're allowed to tell us anything about how you actually calculate it, then to tell us or share something.
I guess I'm trying to think how I can do it without giving the secret sauce. I'll be honest. I mean, the resonance score is relatively
Yes,
new.
marketers
released
don't
it
like
2
doing
weeks
maths,
ago.
so you could tell them what the formula is and they still wouldn't.
Yeah, exactly.
Wouldn't do it.
We'll be here
If
all day.
I've learned anything from my life.
And I'll be honest, I think a lot of it is it's continually being developed in response to briefs, because it's a complicated world. Every sector we work in is different. The TAM is completely different in a sales campaign versus like I'm working on a machinist manufacturing brief at the moment, and like the size of markets are completely different. So what tends to happen is I'm looking at the data as it comes through and I'm just adjusting the formula as I'm going, because it's about 2 weeks in at the moment. But ultimately it's kind of what I described. Really, it's looking for touch points, either in terms of breadth, because that can inform you. Say for example, you've got 50 unique individuals engaging with this influencer versus 10 individuals, but they've each engaged 50 times.
Yeah,
That tells you a completely different story. And like, so if we're thinking about an awareness campaign, maybe I want that broader individual, but if I'm going for an ABM strategy, maybe I want that depth of resonance with key accounts and ensure that we've got that plugged in. So I'd say those are the core elements, but there's a whole bunch of other different signals that we look for. Yeah.
no, that's really cool. It's sort of very similar to sort of Rucha and I built an advocacy program once, customer advocacy program, and it's a very similar way that we were measuring the impact of advocacy on stuff, because it's not often direct. Sometimes there's this indirect kind of influence that happens, and you're sort of trying to measure what that influence is, but you know that it has some because you hear the qualitative side. And then you're like, well, how do I quantify this? So yes, it sounds very similar to that. And I think that's really important to recognize, because, and I also like the fact, Chris, that you said you're not trying to shoehorn metrics in that aren't like either there or things that people measure, because in particular, if I take the example of like traditional PR, people will be like, oh, there's some sort of formula that they use to calculate the value of like of having an editorial or something. And I'm like, but the reality is, if it didn't drive any pipeline, it didn't drive any revenue, then I'm like, that number means nothing to me. So I like we want to be able to see the impact, like you're saying with your resonance score, but equally like we want it to align back to what we actually measure. So I think that's really
I'm the kind of person that would absolutely be like, these are the metrics we're measuring because I know what's best for you. So maybe I need to rethink that approach in life.
Yeah, it's the framing has really worked, and as Will said, we've just kind of flipped like how we're thinking about the same set of numbers, and it's having a completely different impact. And equally just having a really clear point of view around the role of like, how do we measure this, and then we'll work backwards from putting an appropriate program. Just is really actually landing so far. We haven't really got ourselves in a twist or anything at the moment.
Well, no, I think it makes a lot of sense, because like if you just think about what the word influence means, it's that they try to help get people to do something, and it's not about like the volume of the people that see it. It's like, did they actually take any action, or did they do the thing? So it's like, if you can't figure that back and track that to metrics, then it's not necessarily worth doing. So if people are having a think about how they integrate B2B influencers into what they're doing, what are some of the things that they should think about, especially in the context of paid? Because obviously there's the spend around the influencer, but then there's also some paid spend that goes on top in making it a success. And then there's all of the other stuff you were talking about in terms of like, relationships and data. And so what should we do? What should we start thinking about?
The first question I always ask a client is, what are you working on? What's in the pipeline? Because especially if it's the first time they've ever done anything like this, what I would always recommend is just trying to integrate an influencer into something that's already in existence for two reasons. Firstly, because it gets you to compare against the benchmark. We're not just starting cold, but also it's much less lift for the client. It helps to bring it to life in a way that's real for them, as opposed to kind of launching this influencer pilot off on the side and it's out of context, out of synergy with everything else that they're doing. So I'd say that that's probably the key place to start. Maybe then testing 3 core messaging pillars. So maybe we'd activate somewhere around 10 to 12 influencers, each give them 3 different areas to focus on. So we're going to test messaging pillar A, B, and C. Then over the course of that pilot, we can learn, okay, this messaging works best. And then that's our launch pad to scale forward, and then maybe do some thought leadership ads and all the other bits that come off the back of it. So that's just my elevator pitch, I guess, of how I would start.
Would you say that's like the minimum you would do to start? Like because obviously people don't want to spend a lot of money. They want to kind of do it
it works.
as small as possible to see if it works. Would you say that that's kind of roughly like the minimum you would go shoot for?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, it depends, because I mean, if they've got like a webinar opportunity, I think that can be a way to do it, just engaging one influencer for that. I guess if you just want to get a good flavor for the people that are out there, start to build some relationships, integrate them into some content, I would say something along those lines is a good place to start. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think the 2 vehicles that we're seeing is first that organic play that Will kind of alluded to, and that's a nice entry point into a method that they're quite accustomed to. And there's various safeguards that you can put in place to like minimize investment. Obviously, our technology helps scrutinize who to work with and helps validate that. But also just like performance plays. So we're seeing like brands that are, again, accustomed to running thought leadership, webinars, content syndication. How can you have external trusted voices sit at the heart of that versus those internal advocates? And we're just seeing that that's a natural point where brands are gravitating towards, because they know it. And the test for them is, okay, well, if we did bring in that external person of influence, what does that yield for the uplift in our campaign? So it's usually those 2 entry points.
Excellent.
And in terms of B2B influencers, would you say like LinkedIn is still your main playing field, or are you guys looking at other channels and they're performing?
Yeah, it's a good question. LinkedIn for now, for obvious reasons, really. But we are exploring YouTube and Substack in particular at the moment. I think YouTube presents some really cool opportunities, especially around LLM citability, discoverability, through gift of the fact, obviously Gemini leans heavily on it, but most LLMs are citing YouTube because of its long form nature. I think we're just scratching the surface there. And it comes back to influencer discovery metrics as well. What we're starting to play with a little bit is how we could use LLMs citing references to help enhance our influencer selections, to give brands the best chance of being discovered through that source as well. So yeah, it's something that we're starting to play with a little bit.
So should we wrap up this episode with a little bit of marketing gossip? Yeah. Okay. So any marketing gossip that you'd like to share, guys, that you've been seeing, been loving, been annoyed by it, whatever it might be?
You go first, Will.
I like to complain though, Chris, you know me, so I don't know if you should go first, otherwise we're gonna...
Well, no, we love it when people want to moan. That's the whole, like, we're like, tell us if you want to love something.
I know. But... We've not discussed this, but I know what he's going to say. Go on, Will.
It's not going to be that one, I don't think. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, I wasn't going to go there with that one, but maybe I'll tell you guys offline that it's a bit, that's maybe too spicy for this.
Ooh, no, never. Come on, Will.
Okay, shall I do it, Chris? What do you think?
Yeah, it's light-hearted.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, I guess I've worked in influencer now for nearly a decade, and I've seen it grow quite a lot. But I'd say the one area that I haven't seen keep pace with the rate of growth of the sector is the talent agency landscape. I've been there countless times where you're really pushing to get a deal over the line with an influencer. You've got the client here, you've got the influencer there. There's then our own internal things that we need to figure out, and then you've suddenly got an agent there that's also just kind of pushing, I guess, their own interests is the way I'd put it, and that's completely fine, because I know that they serve a purpose for influencers, and I don't have a problem with the industry in principle. But I think a lot of my experiences have tended to be kind of, they're just pushing to get their own commission as much as possible, and I'm not seeing a ton of what they exactly do for the influencer or for the end client at the end of the day. and they're processing the contracts, taking their 20%, and then that's kind of the end of the conversation. So they've been a bit of a bugbear of mine for a while, and Chris is probably hearing me saying this the most diplomatically he's ever heard me say it, probably. And I think there's a big untapped opportunity there and it's an area that Chris and I are actually starting to look at, is how we could offer genuine value for influencers and not just be here to collect a commission or just get in the way of deals, but genuinely lead the charge for influencers, offer them data, help them grow their careers and win more brand deals ultimately, which is what I think a good agent should be doing. And they do exist, of course, but I've just had a lot of experiences where it just feels like they're there to get their commission ultimately. So I'm off my soapbox now.
I don't think you're alone, Will, because I think that's actually, I know like you're saying like B2B in particular is behind. I've got a friend who's a literary agent, and I've got another friend who is an actor who obviously deals with like the old school talent. Yeah. And actually, it's completely, she's gone, so we'll finish up between the three of us.
Yeah.
She's just out. She's like, I'm not into this. I'm gone.
She was really offended by that take, clearly.
Yeah. It's a very unregulated part of industry, just in general, any industry. Like my friend who's a literary agent does a lot for her authors, but she sees a lot of shit. Lot of shit. And I can see, there's a lot of public naming and shaming that goes on in that space. And I can probably see the same kind of maybe translating across into this as well, if people are actually looking after their influencers.
Nice.
Anything that is about looking after people should be top priority, because ultimately that's just good business.
Yeah, right. This is where everyone's winning at the same time, right? And that only happens through just people being honest and just raising these things, I think. So
absolutely. Yeah. Chris, tell us.
Mine was just LinkedIn looking to build a creator marketplace, which we think is really, really interesting. And we think LinkedIn have certainly been dabbling in this space for the last 18, 24 months. And we see that them not being a competitor or counterintuitive to what we're building, but just an amplifier, because when LinkedIn pushes an agenda, a topic, it raises the bar for people's knowledge, and it will help bring to light and certainly kind of, again, shine a light on actually the role of influencers. So we think that this is super interesting. How it looks and feels is, they're weaving in words that we've kind of been discussing. Obviously, they've not coined it from us. But they talk about the role of context. They talk about the role of data informing some of the influencers, or they coin more content creators. So we think this is a really, really interesting space that will emerge with LinkedIn over the next 6, 12, 18 months.
Really? Content creation features are much better.
Yeah.
And it would actually be LinkedIn sort of becoming a bit of a talent agent themselves.
Yeah.
Right? So let's just hope.
Yeah, because it's just like when you're on the receiving end of it at the moment, which we are, like poor engagement, your feed's gone nuts. Like I would feel like, go back to your point, Will, I don't feel like when we're creating content on a platform that's obviously, I'm not saying us alone, but everyone is boosting the usage of the platform, which is what's happened, when you're not particularly well cared for or thought of by them. So it's kind of like, you're like, make us a space that makes us want to keep using your space. Like kind of like YouTube has for people who are making videos. So it's like, I would like to see that. And then yes, hopefully things get better, but we're riding it out. But Ruta and I are like hedging our bets at the moment, aren't we, on which platforms we put stuff. We're trying some others.
What's working for you guys?
It's personal profiles or just like not LinkedIn, sorry, YouTube Shorts.
Yeah. YouTube Shorts.
Like we have gained probably 100 followers on our Blame It On Marketing page in the last year, and we gained 3,500 in the year before.
It just tanked.
It just doesn't get any reach.
And I think even like on the personal profile side, the only posts that get anything is never thought leadership. It's utter shite.
Yeah. I
could say that because I also post utter shite.
Yeah.
I'm A/B testing like a good marketer. And it's like infuriating, because you want, like, obviously we try and post like content that's useful and helpful for marketing people. That's what we're here to do. Yeah. And then it just tanks, and you're like, great.
It seems to be a self-serving agenda to force paid, unfortunately.
Yes, we know. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we need a really great agent.
Yeah.
That's what we're on.
Don't say that word in front of Will.
Will, but
we're trying to get Will to be our agent.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Cool. Excellent. Right. Well, thank you guys. I will finish up. Sorry, my dogs are barking in the background. Ruta will edit them out. So thank you for joining us, Will and Chris. If anyone has any questions about B2B influencers or, like wanting to start that journey, please do message Will and Chris. We'll put all their details in the show notes. But thank you guys, and we'll see you next time.